Today I'm going to be talking about Catholic missions and Spanish colonialism in the Americas, specifically focusing on how Catholic missions are part of the Mexico-U.S. borderlands history. I will be highlighting John Russell Bartlett's personal narrative of explorations and incidents in Texas, New Mexico, California, Sonora, and Chihuahua, a document in the Our Americas Archive Partnership that could provide a way to discuss Catholic missions in light of border histories and disputes. To start off with, I want to begin by defining the purpose and function of a mission. Missions, also called doctrinas and misiones, were created to indoctrinate natives in the official religion of their Spanish colonizers and prepare them for their role in the new colonial order. Missions were essentially frontier institutions, meaning that they helped to push back the borders of Spanish America and civilize the natives in anticipation of the oncoming settlements of colonials. Missions were constructed in pre-existing native communities, but they also helped create new communities. And they provided a space where missionaries could both guide and control natives, as well as teach them new arts and agricultural skills. The missionaries of Spanish America inhabited a tenuous position between the Catholic Church and the Spanish government and the natives, acting as both colonizers and often, as is most notably seen with Bartolomé de las Casas, defenders of native rights. To take as a more specific example, I'd like us to look at the missions in Texas. Missions in Texas began as a result of Catholic rivalries. When threatened by the establishment of French settlements in Texas, Spanish missionaries moved from the southwestern U.S. into Texas and established the first mission, San Francisco de los Tejas, in 1690 near present-day Nacogdoches. Due to disease and flooding, natives grew discontent, and as a result, the missionaries felt threatened and moved away from the area. The failure of San Francisco de los Tejas began a pattern of mission establishment, native discontent, and retreat that eventually drew the missionaries back down to southern Texas. Spanish missionaries headed further south where they began establishing missions along the Rio Grande and within closer proximity to Spanish and Catholic settlements already working throughout Mexico. The relocation towards southern Texas highlights a religious and colonial empire that spans today's national borders. The founding of San Antonio de Valero in 1718 helped the missionaries to establish a way station between South Texas and the East Texas missions, which they would eventually try to reestablish. This site, which later became the site of the Alamo, began as a humble structure of mud, brush, and straw. With the eventual success of this mission, Missions San Jose and San Miguel were established nearby in 1720. John Russell Bartlett's personal narrative of explorations and incidents in Texas, New Mexico, California, Sonora, and Chihuahua provides details about the structure of the San Antonio missions in the 19th century. Working on the Border Commission following along the borderlands, Bartlett records descriptions and sketches of the missions in the early 1850s after the Mexican-American War, and he notes how many of the missions had fallen into decay or been damaged during the Mexican-American War. He writes of one mission, "The whole town is in ruins and presents a scene of desolation which to an American is at once novel and interesting." His narrative helps to contextualize the early colonization of the American Southwest and calls us to consider how the missions and Spanish colonialism constructed a border history that extends from the period of Spanish colonialism through the Mexican-American War to the immigration disputes of the 21st century. Currently, the San Antonio missions are part of a series of historical mission sites along the San Antonio National Parkway. They include the Alamo, Mission San Jose, Mission Conception, Mission San Juan Capistrano, and Mission Espada, all of which Bartlett visited and described in his narrative with the exception of Mission Espada. These missions were restored throughout the 20th century and the early 21st century and represent an essential aspect of Spanish imperialism in American border history. Bartlett's narrative following the Mexican-American War helps to highlight the many layers of borderlands conflict and history represented by these missions, recalling their original Spanish founding and their Mexican and American histories. If you are interested in finding out more about the missions, go to the Our Americas Archive Partnership website and click on the link Educational Materials, where you can find a series of online essays, including today's lecture, under the title Catholic Missions in Spanish Colonialism.